G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. With our AFL Fantasy podcast, it doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players that are going to bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Hef and I'm joined by my co-host Kays. How you going, Kays?
Not too bad, Hef. You?
Oh yeah, not too bad. Now, since we've last spoken, I hear you're a premiership player, mate. What's the go there?
Yes, a couple of weekends ago, the Mighty Cats won the B grade flag. So
That's the Walkerville Cats.
Walkerville Cats. So no, it was good. We got up in a really tight game in the prelim. We were lucky enough to play on a Friday night at Glenelg Oval, which was pretty sweet.
Was it Friday night, was it?
Friday night, Glenelg Oval. We kicked off at 6 o'clock. The A grade followed us at 8, and the buzz was absolutely pumping it at the bay. It was sweet. So we managed to get over in a tight one there, and then we played Jeps Cross in the grand final. At, where was it? Kenilworth Oval. So a big deck, tight game in the first quarter, and then we kind of just slowly put them away in the second and third, and could really enjoy the fourth quarter, just soaking in the premiership success.
Now, I didn't see your game because I was prepping for the prelim, which we'll try not to touch on too much tonight because I've only just got over it.
We can go into that prelim in detail.
But I hear some of the crowd kept some fantasy numbers for the game. So everyone's fantasy numbers were taken in the B grade grand final.
That's correct.
Maybe walk us through the top scorer and maybe then where what you end up with.
I have to dig that up. I didn't have the greatest grand final. I'm happy to put that on record.
Kicking goals?
No goals in the grand final. I kicked 2 in the prelim, so I feel I did my bit to get the team there. But so in the B grade, we played 22 minutes, no time on. The leading possession winner had 20 touches and scored 85 Dream Team points. The least fantasy friendly player was basically me. No, one guy had 27 points. I only had 28 points. So I had 9 touches, 7 kicks. Was it 2 handballs, 1 mark, 1 tackle? Actually, he forgot the tackle, so I had 32. So it's actually pretty hard to get more than 20 touches in a B grade game of footy.
Well, I guess in the B grade as well, you play with reduced numbers, don't you? It's basically 22 minutes, no time on. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to get those big hundreds like they do in the AFL.
And it's basically just a big swarm of players following the ball around, and there's not much free space. So you can't get those, easy 1-2 kind of chip kick, handball kind of things. But no, it was very good. It was good fun.
You're saying there's no proper tactics in B grade. They're just people chasing kicks.
Potentially.
Okay. I wouldn't have thought that. I was a B grade captain at one stage of my life, but I thought I'd play with more grace. No, I absolutely did not. That's a joke. All right. Well, let's get stuck into it. But before we do, Kays, we better thank Remedy Kombucha for supplying us with drinks as per usual. We got the cola tonight, and we're actually going to announce the winners of the survey competition. And one of the prizes actually is a 4-pack of Remedy Kombucha. So it's a pretty
lucky winner.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. All right, so we'll get stuck into those winners actually. So let's. We'll go with the third prize first. Well, let's announce the winner of the Remedy Kombucha. That's a 4-pack of Remedy Kombucha. Do you have the names in front of you, Kays?
I do, yes.
Who's won the 4-pack of Remedy
Kombucha? Congrats to Stuart Ward. You are the lucky owner of a 4-pack of Remedy Kombucha.
Well done, Stuart Ward, and I'll endeavour to get all these prizes out
Is there a cola in this 4-pack?
Yeah, look, I think there's a carton behind me. I think if you can see them just over there. So there's two slabs of cola left. So yeah, definitely get some cola. We'll throw in some blood orange, maybe a raspberry lemonade and some wild berry as well. I'm only giving away 4. As you can see, I've only got 7 cartons behind me, so there's not much to spare. But
that'll take half a week to get through that if it's really thirsty.
I've noticed in the last few months that pile has been diminishing.
And I haven't even been here once, so that's how he's just powering through the kombucha.
Well, it's going to go off, so I need to start drinking it. That's the issue. But anyway, that's the third prize. So that's the Remedy Kombucha. I'll announce the second prize, which is a lovely T-shirt that I'm wearing, one of the white ones we've got here, and that one goes to Kai Bolton. So congratulations to Kai Bolton for winning that one. And the grand prize, Kays, which is the gold membership. Let's announce that one. Who wins the gold membership?
Congrats to Matty Wright, who is the gold membership winner. That's going to be super handy for season 2022.
I was so scared you were going to do a drum roll on the table and ruin all my cameras and audio gear.
You've taken all the fun out of this for me. I want to bring some showmanship to this pod, and I have to basically sit here in a straight jacket and talk into a microphone.
Well, yeah, I remember like every time we used to do it, you used to do a drum roll and it used to just like blitz out the microphone. So yeah, I'm glad you have stopped doing that.
I've learnt.
All right, let's get stuck into the podcast. We'll start off with the finals recap. All right, let's get stuck into it. So what we're going to do in the finals recap, we're just going to go through the order of teams where they finished. So we're going to start off with your mighty Bombers, K's, and we're just going to talk about a few players that that stood out that might be relevant in Keeper League teams next year. So I did most of the heavy lifting for this one, K's. So I'm going to talk through a few.
Go for it.
And I want you to just kind of give me your thoughts on a few players here and there, okay? Mm-hmm. So Sam Draper, K's.
Yep.
Had the game of his career in their final, had 121 points, 44 hitouts, I think it was, against English and Young. So not the best ruckman to go up against, but still a solid hitout for a younger player. And his his second full season, I guess. He spent a lot of time out injured as well. But yeah, he was just good around the ground, took some vital possessions of the ball as well. I think owners would be pretty excited, wouldn't you agree, Case?
Oh shit, yeah, he played awesome.
Is that all we got to say?
Oh, well, yeah, I was just saying, we were, it was a funny game, that one. We watched it, a few guys went to the pub to watch it together, and he was one of the reasons that we were in it in the first half. I think if we kind of capitalised on a few of our, forward entries in that first half, it could have been a different kind of game, but the Dogs just kind of showed their class in the second and obviously ran us down. But yeah, he was one of the guys who really, you were looking at it and being like, yep, if we're going to lose today, but the future's bright.
All right, moving on to another Essendon player, one of my boys, Jai Caldwell, who got injured in round 2. So he was my shining light in my forward line. He was actually picked as my F1. That's how dire my forward keepers were after everyone losing forward status last year, and only played 1.5 games for me, which was a bit disappointing. But he only had 61 points in the final, but he started like an absolute house on fire. So I reckon he was on 50 at halftime and probably only had 11 or so points in the second half around that. But yeah, it just faded. But I don't know, Case, do you think that you just put that down to being underdone, coming straight into a final after not playing?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, but like he was actually everywhere in that first quarter, first half. So, he's going to get fitter in the preseason. He's probably coming into his fourth season next year as well. So his body's going to be right to go. And there's no way that he's not going to have a big impact in that Bombers side next year.
He's basically going to have his third year breakout. It's just delayed a year because of the year off, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, you can't
nailed
lie
it on the head.
Yeah, you can't lie with numbers with science. It's basically the way it is. But yeah, the only issue is he was a forward mid this year. I pulled a couple of weeks ago, I scraped all the champion data positions. So what's on the AFL website, what champion data have all players currently classed as. He's currently classed as a midfielder only by champion data. So that's a bit of a concern for owners. But look, we'll worry about that when we get to the position changes next year. Let's not worry about it too much right now. I'm going to call him one of your boys, Kays. I actually think I owned him in more leagues than you did this year, but you've always been a big fan. That's George Hewitt. So he had 106 points in his final, so they lost to Giddos in the first round by 1 point. I was watching that at Brew Boys, which is where I pretty much live anyway, so that people should have guessed that anyway. But 106 points in that final, but we got to kind of work out that Kennedy was out in this final through injury, so that kind of let him kind of step up a bit more in the midfield. But he finished off the year well. He averaged 97 from his last 3, but you'd think he would lose defender status, wouldn't you?
Quite possibly. Yeah, I'd have to see the splits.
Now, he's probably going to move clubs by the looks to Carlton.
Correct.
Now, you had him, we did a crossover pod with Dawson, the pod, the other day, and you were quite high on him for next year. Do you want to talk us through that?
Well, I suppose my thinking was they're obviously bringing him across for a reason. Their midfield's been a bit average the last couple of years. They need someone to come in there and, help out probably Cripps and Walsh in there. I think George Hewitt's been one who probably a couple of years ago he was starting to develop, then he hit some injuries, and this year we've seen the rise of, or even last year, Rowbottom came on the scene, then we've seen Warner, Goulden, all these guys kind of take it to the next level, so they had to throw Hewitt on that half back line. He's always kind of been a bit of an inside player. The scores have never genuinely been there where you're like, oh my god, he's going to be a premium. But we've seen this year when Matty Kennedy went in and played that inside role at the Blues, he scored pretty well. Like his back end of the season was super hot. If George Hewitt's coming across for that pure reason, I think that he's one who could easily score quite well. And if he can sneak on and keep and hold that defender status, he could be a real handy kind of buy low option.
I don't think he does hold that defender status, unfortunately. I didn't actually check the champion data ranking for him, but I don't think he actually holds it. But I guess my concern is, and what you've kind of brought this up now, I think a couple of times, you brought it up the other night, do you think there's room for him and Matt Kennedy in the same side, or do you think, more so to, I guess they're definitely playing the same side, but do you reckon there's enough for them to, score fantasy-wise in the same side? What do you think?
Well, they're going to have 3 guys starting on ball. So you assume it's going to be Walsh, Cripps, maybe Hewitt, maybe Kennedy.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone else is ready to go in that midfield. Like Setterfield hasn't really set the world on fire. Fisher's skinny. They've got all their swag of half-forward flankers. So I think if they need that grunt guy, which they've brought him in for, I think he can be the one that can score.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt that. I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical, but we saw him score at Sydney, but I think he scored better when people were missing and people were injured. That's all. So I'm just a bit concerned about that. But I think if he's getting paid the money he's going to be getting paid,
he's going to Carlton. Everyone's missing at Carlton all the time.
Yeah, true. He's going to want to stand up. All right, we'll move on to GWS. So they lost the following week to Geelong to finish, 6th on the ladder. So there's only one guy I really want to talk about through their finals campaign, and that's another one of your boys, Kays. That's Sam Taylor. So I want to ask, and I'll just go through a few things, but I want to know if you're still taking him as early as you said you were next season, because my point was he was a key defender, and he's had a couple tons, but he was kind of littered between scores of 50 and things like that, and his 2 scores in the finals were 67 and 29. So these are when you're coming up against good competitive sides. You're going to have to play your lockdown role. Does this still deter you for next year?
I think finals is a different kind of ball game for defenders, especially. I think he will only be better freed up as well at some stage. I think he's like a natural intercept defender, so that'll take time for him to kind of move into that role. But look, when did I start taking him early? I would have thought I said I took him midway through a draft. Is that early, is it?
No, I think you said I think you were kind of sarcastic. I said, how early are you going to take him? I was like, first, second round. You were like, yep, but I'm not sure how serious you were about that. It was more that you were just so hyped up after he turned up.
I was pretty hyped up.
Yeah.
No, I'm still keen to take him. Like, obviously, I'm not going to take him in the first, 5 or 6 rounds. But look, midway through a draft of ours, who we take, 16, I'll be looking around that 8 because especially if your team's good, he's going to play each week, and if he can ton up 4 or 5 or 6 times next year, and we're still playing, rolling lockouts and that kind of thing, I think he's a great option.
All right, we'll move on to Brisbane now. A couple of players I want to talk about for Brisbane. So Oscar McInerney. So I reckon he's done enough this year to cement himself as a ruck one in most keeper league sides. So I think that was pretty obvious anyway, but there was some doubts, especially early in the season where he didn't score too well. Then I think he had a bit of an ankle injury that kind of hampered him a little bit. But he averaged 91 from his last 5 games, and I just can't see Brisbane rolling with anyone as like a backup anymore. Archie Smith retired. There's not really a lot going around on the list. I'm probably missing, there's another ruckman that I'm missing up there, but I can't remember.
Fullerton.
What's that? Tom Fullerton, that's right. And he just plays as a ruck forward, really. So, so I can see him rolling out as the number 1 ruck. So I think he's going to be, pretty decent going forward. You happy with that assessment as a ruck one?
Yeah, I think so. I don't love him as much as if we were starting a brand new draft or you were doing a redraft.
Yeah.
He's not someone I'd be really targeting at all early or anything like that. If you got him, your old theory is when you're doing a redraft is, take ruckman basically as late as you possibly can. Maybe you'd look at him then, but he's not even someone for a keeper that I'd be super excited about to own long term. I'd be happy if I had him just, for cheap. But yeah, no, I don't love him is my point.
Oh, fair enough. Charlie Cameron. So I harp on him about him all the time, but he had back-to-back 80s in both the games in finals. So yeah, like I said, I talk about him way too much, but he's just someone who's always available in drafts and he provides you with good cover. He started pretty slow this year, but he came good towards the end. So he did that kind of just, a bench player that you loophole on when he kicks a bag of 4 or 5 and, tons up. So he's a pretty handy one to own just for those instances, really. Moving on to Geelong, who lost to Melbourne in probably just slightly more embarrassing fashion than Port Adelaide, but only just. I think they lost by 81 points. But actually, they were actually in the game for some of it. So, I don't know. You could argue some of that.
Yeah.
I keep rehashing this anyway.
I can't wait to talk about the next team.
I've only got a few players to talk about. But anyway, Reece Stanley. He is the ultimate tease as a ruckman. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Look, He had a quiet week 1 against Port Adelaide, racking against Laddams and Lycett, so it's not the easiest task there. But then he had 123 in week 2 of finals against GWS, and then had a respectable 77 against Melbourne. That was against Gordon Jackson, so 2 pretty handy ruckmen there. Look, if he's best 22, I reckon he's a handy fantasy ruckman, but it's just, do we see the Geelong ruck department changing? So, do they fast track someone like Shannon Neal, or I can't even say his name, Paul Sitsipolitis? Is that say his name? The Greek Sapatilius. He had a big game in the last round of the VFL. I think that they actually were able to play, or was it actually in a scratch match that they were able to play, I think, with the COVID restrictions. So he absolutely starred in one of those games. So they were talking him up as well. But I think the kind of the trade rumour, not even a trade rumour, but trade suggestion that people have been floating out is Peter Laddams to Geelong in a bid to secure a number 1 ruck spot. What do you think? I know the answer to this, I think, Kays, but I'm going to put it to you. Can you trust someone like Reece Stanley?
Well, he's 31 in December. So, like, what are you doing with him? Would you keep him? I don't know. Like,
if you're desperate for a ruckman, what do you reckon? Do you roll with him? Do you reckon he's definitely not someone you can trust as a ruck one?
Yeah, but he's one of those guys that maybe he gets put back in a pool and, almost plays like someone who drafted like Tom Hickey this year as I've got a ruckman, but it's always nice to have someone else who's playing, and, he just kind of blossomed. Maybe Stanley's a guy that, you just take as someone who can score big in his day, and if you play utilities, he's a handy player to have. But yeah, look, if someone like Pete Laddams goes to Geelong, I think stocks would be shrinking in Reece Stanley, or growing in Reece Stanley. They would people would be jumping off quickly. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Peter Laddams, because quite a respectable fantasy scorer when he rucks as a ruck one. Actually, Simo, one of our writers from the website, he pulled some numbers together, and I can't actually access my phone right now because I'm using it for this stream. But it was, he worked out all his numbers rucking solo, and they're absolutely ridiculous, like when compared to rucking with Lycett. So, if he does get the trade, I don't think he actually wants to leave Port Adelaide, but Port of Adelaide have said, explore your options. So it's a bit sad, but we'll see what happens with that one. Talking about Port Adelaide now, we'll get stuck in. So the first player I want to talk about. Now, something else you talked about on the pod the other night.
Yep.
What time did you leave the prelim final?
Just after half time, Case.
Listeners, does that kind of, rattle you to the core?
What's even bad about that? Like, I paid $200 to watch a game that was over in 5 minutes. Now, can I bring you back to 2020, Case, when I actually organised a free ticket for you to actually just turn up at an Essendon game, and you never showed?
It's because I was celebrating my team's success.
You lost.
My actual team.
You lost. You didn't
lost the grand final.
Yeah, exactly. So you could have gone to the game and gone back afterwards. Plus, you weren't even playing.
Please.
You weren't even playing.
I was the runner.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So the runners need to be there. So I don't know.
That's what it's called when you're part of a team.
You can criticise my support case, but look, at least I went to 15 games this season and paid $200 to go to a prelim.
Yes.
Plus, I reckon I've spent probably $25,000 on going to watch Port play over the last 10 years or so, 12 years or so. Don't question my support, mate. Do not.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on to Riley Bonner. 67 in week 1 of finals. All right. 129 in the prelim, though. So, pretty shocking start in the first one. Well, 67's pretty respectable for him, I guess. But then absolutely went bananas. Probably one of Port's best players in the prelim, despite some of the heat he copped on the socials for one act that happened. But anyway, he seems to have cemented a spot in the side this season and actually started to put up some half-decent numbers this year. He averaged 77 from his last 5 games of the season and also had 104 in round 23. Always looked like the fantasy type. He just could never really cement a spot to kind of get going and couldn't gain that momentum. Now, I had written here Dawson potentially coming to Port Adelaide, so that is out the window. So I think Bonner is going to be held in good stead. I think he's actually got a bit of potential going forwards. What do you think, Case?
I think he's got some tricks. I thought he would have come on maybe a year or two ago, so he's just kind of a bit slower developer. But you've got some serious talent through the wing, half back, half forward, wherever you want to play those guys. Amon, Bergman, as you said, Rosie, Butters, Dersma. You've got some speed. So can they all just fit in one team and score well all together would be my big question.
Yeah, probably not. I don't think. With too many, like you just said, there's too many of those types. So I really don't know where they're all going to sit. And if it does happen, like someone like Bergman will push up to a wing and that'll just kill his defender status. I think he's almost lost his defender status going into next year anyway. So that kind of sucks anyway. So I think Riley Bonner is definitely destined for a halfback flank. I don't see him playing anywhere else. I know he was trialled as a wingman in round 1 when he did his hammy and didn't play for a long time. But yeah, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Bergman's going to cement that role
Do
somehow.
you reckon that Dawson didn't go to Port because there was genuinely no place for him to play?
I think he went to Crows because he's a Crows supporter, grew up. I think that was probably in the end. He said all along he wanted to play for the Crows. It was just more so that I think Port were coming hard for him.
As they should.
Yeah, and it was just testing loyalties, and he chose the Crows, which is fine by me. You know, there's a part of me that would always want to play for the club you grew up supporting. I think so.
That's fair.
Yeah. Connor Rozee. I still have faith he's going to take a step forward next season. He had 73 in the first week, 67 in the prelim, and he didn't look great in the prelim. He looked pretty scared of the footy at sometimes. But I think he'll keep that forward status, obviously, and I'm still backing him in for an average of 80 next season. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, jury's still out with Rozee for me. Like, I think he's a good player, like a quality player. Is he a fantasy player would be my question.
My thinking is like, well, I think at the start of this year, everyone thought he was going to move into that midfield. I think that's probably not going to happen going forward. But what will happen is he'll keep his forward status long term, I think, and that's probably going to be more vital than him going into the midfield and being a huge 100 plus averager. I think him as an 80 averaging forward, I think is probably going to be better for us as fantasy coaches. Don't you think?
Than a 90 averaging mid.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Like, I guess I likened him to Chad Wingard, who's never been a huge fantasy scorer, but when he was playing at Port, he was playing in the midfield and just getting 22 touches and scoring 80s and stuff like that. If you don't want, I know Chad Wingard's always been a forward. He's never lost forward status, but there was probably a period where we thought he might, and that was looking pretty grim. So, I think if Connor Rozee can maintain that forward status, it's going to be pretty handy for coaches. Onto the grand final lists now. So we'll talk about Western Bulldogs first. Not a lot to talk about here, but Tim English. So he was good in his first 2 weeks of finals. He had 78 versus Essendon and 84 versus Brisbane. And this was rucking solo, though. And then Stephen Martin comes in the side and he has 56 against Port Adelaide and 67 in the grand final. Now, it sounds like Stephen Martin's going to go for another season. I don't know how much his body holds up, whether he just stays injured the whole season and then comes in and plays finals again. Who knows? As an owner case, what are you doing with Tim English?
If he's keeping his ruck forward status, I'm not super concerned. Yes, it would have been nice for him to, be a mid-80s ruckman like he probably should be, but at the same time, he's kind of proven that he's a genuine threat up forward. They're still not going to have Josh Bruce next year, so he's going to be, him and Norton would be the two big guys up forward, I think. I think, unfortunately, he hasn't really proven lately he's as good as a ruckman as he should be. Like, I still think he's still young enough that he could come on another year or two and get a bit more size and just a bit more confidence in the ruck. But I think, the DPP status with ruck forward, I think just makes him easy hold if you are an owner.
Yeah, I agree with that forward status, and that's actually something I probably forgot about a little bit. I would be holding him if he had forward status too, and because he probably will end up at number one ruck throughout periods throughout next season, depending on injury and things like that, or just form and stuff like that. And he's shown potential that he can be a good scorer. It's more so that if he is rucking with someone else, you're gonna want to have another ruckman in the wings to play it, don't you?
I tend to agree.
Yeah, and you probably want to exploit that forward status too. That was probably one of the hard things me owning Laddams this year is I had him handcuffed to Lycett and I could just never exploit him up forward because the only time he was worth playing was when
he was rucking.
When he was rucking solo and you had to have him in the ruck. So didn't really work out. Moving on to the Premiership team, Melbourne. So Alex Neil-Bullen is the first player I want to talk about because, he had 105 against Brisbane and then 67 against Geelong and then 89 in the grand final against Western Bulldogs. So he plays a high half forward role, but he gets kind of forced into that connector role because I was watching Brayshaw and who's the other winger? Langdon on Saturday night. And they work so hard defensively that kind of they all push up and he kind of gets brought up to that wing role. And if you look at his heat map, it looks like he's actually running up and down at wing, but he's definitely playing that half forward role. And he kind of, gets kind of played into that connector role and gets a lot in the middle of the ground. So as a forward, I think he's going to be super, super good value in drafts next year. I'm not sure what his popularity was like this year, his ownership percentage. I think it was up there towards the end, but it's hard to tell when that comes down to waivers. And, if they're leagues like us that play, that don't play waivers, you could be there. So you're a fan of Neil-Bullen?
I am, but I don't think he's really going to, slide in too many drafts either. I don't think. I think people who are pretty avid football watchers have appreciated how good his year has been. So I think, and he might even go a bit higher than he probably should as well, just because he's coming off some good scores late in the season, especially a good final series. So one, if you can get involved, but at the same time, I think maybe don't go as high as he potentially goes this year.
Yeah, I'm thinking that, I don't think he's going to slide or anything like that. I think he's just going to be available, to be taken there.
Yeah.
And he'd kind of be almost like a first or second round type pick in a league like ours, considering forwards are that hard to come by. Won't be a huge scorer, but, we'll pop up with the 80 every now and then and be pretty handy. Moving on to Bailey Fritsch. So he had a great final series, really. Kind of robbed of the Norm Smith in a way. It's kind of hard, not really, but...
Anyone can kick goals, mate. You got to get it to him.
I don't know. Not many people would kick 6 in a grand final. Miss out. I'd love to see the record. I think it was the most in a grand final, wasn't it?
Since Darren Jarman.
Yeah. And Darren Jarman didn't win the Norm Smith, so yeah, maybe not. Anyway, look, he had 82 goals against Brisbane, kicked 4 goals there. 86 versus Geelong, kicked 2 goals there. Then 87 versus Western Bulldogs, 6 goals in that grand final. Just a great finals campaign. We know he needs to kick goals to score, but we know that he's more than capable of kicking goals each week. He'll play every week. I reckon you could do a lot worse as your F5. Would you rate him that highly as an F5?
Yeah, I suppose it depends how deep forwards roll next year. I think, for some teams it could even be an F4.
Yeah.
Possibly even F3. I suppose with the guys that you are so reliant on goals, you always get a bit worried. He's kind of like a bit Charlie Cameron style where, he'll score well and he kicks a bag and he needs to be on. So there is that kind of worry for me. But at the same time, look, if you can get someone and you can ride him, against weaker teams like North or the Crows or something like that when he's a chance to kick a bag, definitely you can have a piece of him.
He's basically like a quasi key forward, like a semi key forward, and he plays like one because he's kind of mark lead kick type thing, but he's kind of just not as tall as the other ones.
Correct.
But yeah, he was scoring the same way. One of your boys, K's Luke Jackson, didn't have a massive finals campaign fantasy wise, but he did have 83 in the grand final. I just think he's going to be a great player, so just hold on to him if you can. I think he still might be a couple years away from fully kind of developing, and then playing next to Gawn, there's always going to eat into his scoring a little bit. But I think once the kind of changing the guard actually properly happens in a couple of years' time, he's going to be a gun. And another one that didn't score huge in the finals was Trent Rivers, but he just plays the right sort of game. And I'm just tipping a breakout season for him in his third year, the magical break season. I think the one takeaway from Melbourne is that they've just got so many good young players. Like, do you think they could be on the verge of like a Richmond Hawthorn style dynasty? Do you reckon it's possible for a team like that?
If they can keep them all, because like even guys like, Sparrow doesn't even need to touch it much in the grand final, but I think he's a great player. James Jordan couldn't make it. They got some really good kids. Add on Cozzy Pickett, who could be anything. Jackson in the ruck. Their mids are still young. Clayton Holler's, probably 24, 25. Like, still so much time for them to dominate for years to come.
Absolutely. All right, that's our finals recap, and now we're going to move on to our hits and misses. All right, the hits and misses. So we're basically going to go through our keepers and our draft picks for the season and kind of work out some of our better picks, some of our worst picks, some hindsight things and little bits and pieces like that. So, Case, we're going to start off with our keepers.
Yep.
Who were your keeper wins? So players that you kept that were not the obvious ones, obviously. You kept McRae or stuff like that. They're always going to be obvious. But some kind of 50-50 keepers or guys you weren't so sure and that would turn out to be wins.
Yeah. I suppose I really probably only had 3 wins across my 2 legs. So I was pretty, I kept Jackson McRae, so that was a great choice. But I mean, the borderline ones. So I was pretty stoked that I kept Luke Jackson and Harry Schoenberg in the end. So kept faith with them. I did trade Schoenberg towards the end of the season, try and have a crack at a flag, which obviously I regret because he went ham after that. But that seems to be what happens. I trade out guys.
Didn't you see that coming? What happened?
Not quite. No, but Shannon Hearn almost. If he didn't get injured, could have got me close to winning a flag. But so no regrets there. But obviously I've got Luke Jackson. Him and Tim English going forward are going to be great for my side. Look, in our podcasters league. Darcy Parish was so close to being delisted for me. Kept the faith and obviously so relieved I held him because I kind of had him flagged as maybe just never getting the opportunity in that midfield. But obviously the injuries in the Dons, guts allowed him to get in there and we can actually see what he can do. And he's proven he can be a very good scorer. So I think they were the hits for me.
All right, my hits. So I didn't have too many, but I'll go through the home league. Yeah, mine was probably less than yours, actually. My wins, I guess, in the home league. Isaac Smith, I got super cheap in a trade early, so I ended up keeping him as pretty much my last keeper. Just thinking he had forward status, new club. I was pretty happy to get him. I got him, third round draft pick. So that was a bit of a steal. Ended up being one of the top forwards of the year, so pretty happy with that, considering the guy who owned him was ready to throw him on the scrap heap. And he'd had a shoulder injury the year before, didn't he? Something like that.
I remember.
Missed a fair whack of the last bit of the season, I reckon. So that probably put a few people off. Peter Adams is going to turn into a win. I think throughout the year he was up and down. When he had that period as ruck, obviously, he was a super handy win. And I think he did have 1 or 2 good games rucking in tandem with Scotty Lycett. But I think if he gets traded, he's going to end up as a big win for me. And in the Podcasters League, there was just a couple. So Zach Jones is always on the verge of being thrown back to the pool. Kept him, and I guess he was handy enough. And he's always going to be a keeper. But Daniel Rich, I just didn't expect him to go as big this year. And he was kind of on my D4, D5 because my defenders did roll deep, but he ended up being one of my better ones for the year. So I guess I'll just throw him in there, a bit of a special mention. What about your losses, Case?
Well, I'll start off with 2 losses that were because I didn't actually keep them. So they were in my squads last year and I probably should have held. So in our home league, I had Willem Drew. Obviously, he had a really bad run with injury last year. So it was just for me one of those ones who, threw back on the scrap heap. But I think it was hard to make a case for him to be a keeper in our 16 league. But obviously he ended up, having a great season. And in the Podcasters League, I delisted Pete Wright, which in hindsight with ruck forward status and the ruck woes I had with Jared Witts, he would have been good to have. But the keepers for me, look, Dev Smith had an absolute shocker, but you probably would have kept him in hindsight, regardless, purely on the fact that forward's really hard as well. But in the Podcasters League, like I had Jack Martin, who stunk it up, Hamish Hartlett, who was not best 22 and is now delisted, and Graham Myers, who had some injury woes, but just was really underwhelming from what he kind of promised a couple of years ago.
Losses for me, quite a few. So Nick Caulfield and Dill Stevens were the biggest ones for me. So I ended up keeping Dylan Stevens over Brandon Ellis in the end, thinking I didn't think Brandon Ellis. I didn't think Dylan Stevens was going to average more or anything like that. I just didn't think Brandon Ellis would have a 90+ season again because he'd only done it once, and I figured there'd be people like Rao and Anderson kind of taking over a little bit more. And so I was happy to throw him back. Also, I just had a glut of midfielders and I had no forwards, so I didn't want to go into a draft with basically no forwards. So I had to throw him back, and that was a bit of a loss, but he kind of came back to what I expected him to be towards the end of the season and then got injured as well. So, and I think the changing the guard will happen with those kind of younger midfielders coming through because he's getting on a bit, Ellis. So I definitely regret it for this season, but because I'm not going to keep Dill Stevens either, so it was just a throwaway.
Why did he stay at Sydney as well?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because he's not going to get too much of a run there, especially with some of those youngsters coming through.
Madness.
Yeah, I got no idea. But and then I think in the losses in the Podcasters League, Tom Rockcliffe was a big one. So I don't think he played a full game for the whole season. I think it's 2 subs and then injured in the 2s. Is that what happened? I think what happened.
Yep.
So yeah, someone I kind of expected to be 100+ average for when he played. There was always whispers he wasn't best 22. I wouldn't have been surprised about that, but I thought that there'd be injury affected games and stuff like that where he'd come in, and then my sneaky thing was I thought he'd get a farewell game at the end as well, so I thought it was still going to be okay.
But he was just too cactus.
Yeah, too injured, too cooked, too many injuries, so that kept him out. And just another one, Tom Hawkins was someone I kept, which probably there's a few other options I could have gone with. I kept him because he had the forward status, obviously, because they were scarce, but it kind of just didn't pay off. I could have done better in the draft and kept an extra midfielder or something like that. So that was another one that probably went through. All right, let's get to our draft, Kays. Now, you've actually got every draft pick you've made across 2 leagues. You want to go through all of them?
I'll just be super quick.
All right, cool.
So in our home league, I took Rory Sloane with my first pick. So that's player 200. Look, I think he was solid. He almost got close to winning me a flag in his last couple of games because he pulled out a couple of big hundreds towards the end of the season. So I think that's a good pick. Tom Papley went pick 2 for me, which is obviously went too high. He had a stink of a season. Jackson Nelson I was pretty keen on at the start of the year. He was my 3rd pick. Big loss there. Took the punt on Will Phillips because, there was a bit of hype around him, high draft pick, and he kept sliding because obviously Goulden went early, Campbell went early, and I was like, look, if I'm ever going to have a crack at someone like him, I just thought it sat right in hindsight, but look, obviously he just didn't come on. But I still think there's a future for him fantasy-wise.
But you can't keep him in our side.
Won't be keeping him, no. Yeah. But,
we're going to keep 16, just to explain it, we're going to keep 16. It's really hard to keep first-year players in our
unless they're really showing something.
Unless they're absolutely dead set guns, because you're throwing back usually someone who's averaging 80 or so in place of them. That's all.
Then I took Dylan Moore next, who was a big win for me. He's almost becoming one of my favourite players. I just love the way he goes about it, and could even be sniffing around the a keeper spot if my forwards don't work out next year. Then I went Cam Zerha, he was a loss. He was too inconsistent, but did come home strongly. Look, Shane Edwards was, pick 272. I think that's all right. He was good cover for me. Never actually was fieldable, but like you're just someone who you could bank on having as a mid cover.
You've got win written here. Mid only the average 65. Sorry, I can't call that a win.
At pick 272.
Like, sure, like you can claim like how late they are, but like everyone's got late draft picks that are pretty decent.
Well, that's a win in my eyes. It's subjective.
It's not.
Is Chris Mayne a win at the next pick, being one of the best averaging defenders last year?
Depends the way you look at it, because like the way I look at it is like you weren't going to keep him beyond this season. It didn't win your flag.
It almost won me a flag. It got me to a grand final. You can't be any closer.
But like if everyone drafts that way, like without looking for a future gun, if they just go, look, I'm going to draft a guy that's going to be around for 1 year and average 80, like that would be pretty competitive. It's like Geelong each year. They're competitive because like they just keep topping up, but they don't quite ever grab the talent to actually get him to the next step. And that's what I see you've done in your draft.
But when I'd already drafted, Papley, who's young, Nelson young, Phillips young, Moore young, Zerha young, I think at that point I can actually go, all right, I need some guys who are going to play each week and score well.
They're losses, though. All those ones above are losses too.
Chris Mayne was not a loss.
No, the ones above that are losses. That's what I'm saying.
Tom McDonald took next. I think he was a huge win. He started off the year super well. One of the better averaging forwards that year. Paul Hunter, I tried to grab for some right cover, but he was horrible. Dave Cunningham, RIP, did his ACL. Feel sorry for you, Dave. I do love you. Mickey Gibbons was pretty average. Next, Josh Rotham. He was picked 340. He was pretty good for me. He put up some big numbers as a defender. He's sniffing around the keeper as well. Then Callum Sinclair, who was fine. He played a couple of games for me, but didn't give much. Look, then we upgraded. We managed to upgrade Aaron Norton and Ben Keys.
You don't have to talk through these ones. These
was great. Picks. What about rookies?
They're upgrades. So you draft them last year.
Yeah. But then I took Kane Farrell first, which was too early, and obviously he did his ACL. I thought he could be a sneaky chance to get some good games at Port. Just didn't quite put the scores on the board. Nick Cox went next, who I love. He's going to be obviously retained as a rookie. Then Jeremy Sharp. What was that, pick 416 as a rookie?
That's
so
a great pick. I do like that one. Out of your draft, like I don't love your draft because I don't think you're getting a lot of keepers out of them. And you didn't win a flag.
I'm not going to get a lot of keepers out of them.
Now you've got a real low draft pick next year, so I don't know where you're going to go.
I'll draft well again. Don't worry about that.
You seem to draft better when you have higher picks.
Then I took Shannon Neal, who didn't play much, and then held Chad Warner and Jarman Impey, which are great. So I was actually pretty happy with my draft. Yes, I'm not going to get a lot of keepers out of it, but I thought my starting 16 was good enough to give the finals a shake and give it a shake, and I almost got there.
See, I finished third last year in our league, but I didn't. It's not like it's not a tank. I just didn't think I was going to win the flag, considering the finals I'd lost. The forwards I'd lost, and how good the top team who was. Like, he was just his in the bag all year. So that's kind of why I went more speculative and tried to get, instead of getting someone I know is going to get a 70 or an 80, I tried to get the next big thing. A lot of them didn't pay off.
But you've still got worse 16 keepers than me.
What's that?
You've still got a worse 16 keepers than me.
Well, it's more that I just don't have forwards. That's my issues. Like I think my midfield is, he rivals yours. It's not quite as good, but I've got a very young midfield, and it's led by Jack Steele, so it's hard to go wrong. My defenders are right, and my ruck's fine now. I just don't have any forwards. That's the issue. Do we need to go through your whole? Just want to go through a couple of your
sure.
Podcasters League.
Podcasters League.
Your best ones.
The one that I drafted pretty well at the start, and then it kind of all fell away. But I took Jack Zebber with my first pick, and everyone laughed at me. Yes, my logic from why he would score well was bad, as you're going to pick apart in a second, I know. But look, he had back forward DPP and was amazing. So screw everyone who was laughing at me for that pick.
Great pick. Just your reasoning for picking him was different back then.
Pick 2, Isaac Cumming.
That's another good pick. Another great pick.
Pick 3, Jordan Clark. Obviously a big miss. But then I've managed to take Nick Newman at pick 4, which I think was great.
Matthew Kennedy was a big
Matt Kennedy at 6. And then after that, not a hell of a lot after that. Like Caleb Poulter at pick 320 might make the keepers just on a perspective kind of base. Harry Mackay's around there too. So apart from that, I thought I did well early because I was really lucky in defenders. So to pick up Cumming, Newman, is going to be great for my season, for my team's future. Sorry.
All right, I'm just going to go through my wins. So my biggest win was Carl Amon in the first round. So you passed over him, went for Rory Sloane, and I guess a few people were just like, why the hell are we picking Carl Amon? I just felt like the season he had last year was ready to go another level. He could have gone another level.
Carl Amon was in my my 10 picks
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
So I definitely never thought Amon was a bad pick. I just thought
No,
Sloan
no.
would be safer.
No, fair enough. But yeah, no, it's more so just just a lot of people didn't kind of really rate that pick, but I was pretty happy to get him. And to get a 100 average player out of draft, you're going okay because it's pretty hard to pick 100 average. Well, I think he averaged 99 in the end, but I'm going to round it up. It's pretty hard to pick him. But apart from that, like I went real young this year, and I picked up a few youngsters that I'm pretty happy with for the future. So a few wins in my draft was Miles Bergman, Archie Perkins, and Luke Edwards. And there's another one I'm missing there, but someone else was good in there. I think Mitch Georgiadis was kind of serviceable. He's just probably not going to make my keepers, that's all. But yeah, there's a few losses in as well. So Damon Greaves I took in the second round, which sucked. Like I've said, harped on a million of times. After 3 games, yes, small sample size, but those 3 games were
The
just...
Harry Morrison effect is what I like to call it.
But no, Harry Morrison never went at 90%. Like I wouldn't pick him on back of 3 good fantasy scores. It was more that if you can use the ball that well for 3 games in a row, I start to expect that all the time, and not all of a sudden he just lost it. Like he couldn't kick the ball like that again. And it was just unreal.
It's like he touched that magic basketball from Space Jam.
Yeah, pretty much. The big one that I got sucked into was Andrew McPherson playing that huge.
You got dossed.
Game. That was the biggest suck. I was the biggest sucked in pick for me. He had that huge. Looked like he just slotted into Laird's role and played it exactly perfectly in the trial match against Port Adelaide, where they were just absolutely dominating. He was the shining light. I think the issue probably with him was just Crows got too good. Like we didn't expect the Crows to actually be as good as they were.
Do you reckon McPherson's actually good at football?
No, definitely not. But I thought that he would just, like, Crows would be terrible. It'd be in their back lines and he'd be playing that sweeper role and get him out there. And I think Crows were a lot better than that. And then he's just terrible. You're up. So yeah, that's a few of my losses. And the Podcasters League, like Higgins and Sloan I took early. They were serviceable because my team was probably its last chance at a crack. So I'd lost 2 grand finals in a row. Was hoping to make a 3rd grand final and win it. Wasn't to be.
Yeah, I bet
lost out in the semi. That was probably unexpected though. I was probably favourite going to that. But anyway, team didn't stand up on the day. That's what happens. But yeah, those 2 were serviceable to get me there. But I did pick up, I think I picked up Impey in the last round, which was quite good. Oh, one of the last rounds, second last round. Chad Warner, I got super late, and Errol Golden, like he just went after some silly picks. Like he went later than Jamara Ugle-Hagan, and he went later than McRae, like Collingwood McRae, Finlay McRae. So like, yeah, I just got him way after all those kind of guys had been off the board. So I thought it was just stupid to be able to pick him up late. So I thought that was a pretty good pick to get him. I think it was pick 33 or something like that where it was. So that was cool. Oh, somewhere late 20s, early 30s, something like that. So I was pretty happy with those. But yeah, big losses was Jeremy Cameron. I went early on, I think 3rd round with him, and didn't kind of deliver. I was injured for a lot of the year as well. And Jared Pollock, I don't know. I just didn't see a way where he wouldn't be in the best 22 just because North were going to be so bad. I think they just relied on the senior heads, and he just wasn't best 22. So yeah, that's basically it for me. We'll move on to some of our trades. So your trade losses, Kaz, there was a lot of those in the Podcasters League.
Yeah, I kind of set fire to my side in the Podcasters League.
Still beat me in the final.
I was still partying from my flag last year. Look, in hindsight, like I had a lot of good midfielders. Well, I thought I did, but so I got rid of McCluggage for Mickey Walters because I had 0 forwards in that league. So I thought Walters is good for an 80. Time caught up with him and the role wasn't great. So obviously a bad trade there. I kind of got caught badly. I got rid of Whitfield, Cornelio and Clark for Jeremy Howe, Matt Flynn and Paddy Lipinski. So Jeremy Howe and Paddy Lipinski will be fantastic next year.
Lipinski will.
Lipinski will be fantastic.
Howe's old and injury prone now.
Yeah, I actually think...
Trade away Whitfield for basically Howe.
Yeah, basically. Oh. But like Whitfield was, I thought he was going to be out for a lot longer. I was going to go for a flag. Look, bad trade, definitely bad trade.
And you traded him out for a guy who was already out for a long time. Yes, he was coming back, but
Flint, Howe was back.
No, I'm talking about Howe. Oh, was Howe back by that stage?
He was back. He was playing.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So that was bad. Whitfield came back the next week though.
Like 2 weeks later. Yeah. So bad. But
I'm
not sure where Cornelio's at, so I'm not actually upset about that.
Cornelio might be a forward next year.
And look, Flynn was serviceable because Witts went down with an ACL, so I had no ruckman. So I needed someone, and Flynn was playing well at that time. Look, wins. I actually traded out Jackson Nelson for Dane Rampy, and Dane Rampy played a lot of games for me late because he was averaging basically 75, 80 each week, which was great for my kind of 21st, 22nd player in the side. And look, this is a bit of a what is it? 50-50 one. But
There
look,
you
I
go.
traded out Jack Bowes and Harry Schoenberg, brought in Lockie Hunter and Shannon Hearn at the tilt for a flag. So I needed a good or a solid forward, and that stage Schoenberg wasn't really showing too much. Bowes was on the decline, and Hearn had been notching up hundreds for fun. So unfortunately, Hearn didn't play in the prelim or the grand final, but definitely helped me get to the pointy end of the season. So I think that was a fair trade.
I didn't really make too many
You didn't
trades.
make any trades.
Oh, no, I made one. I traded a third round pick for Isaac Smith, so that was handy. My issue is pre-season, I'm too busy writing articles for AFL.com.au, doing all those social clips, playing on the podcast, recording it, editing. I just don't have time to get on those group chats, Case.
Is that right?
That's my
You've
issue.
got no time.
None at all.
Got no time to be on our group chat, Hef.
Nah, not at all. So, yeah, literally, I'm like working on this like every night of the week, essentially. I'm still working now. You would have seen my...
I'm working now too.
I mean...
It's actually live. People can see this.
I spent all day setting up these cameras. But anyway, you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. But anyway, look, I made a couple of trades. There was that one, so that was okay. I did also trade... I traded Isaac Smith out as well. So both my trades involved Isaac Smith. Traded him out for Trent Dumont, just thinking that he's just a bit younger. Isaac Smith's got one more year. I'll get another 3-4 out of Dumont, and hopefully he can recapture the form of 2020, or his fantasy form of 2020. And basically, if he's not injured, he should go okay.
Fitness issues for Froggy. Yeah.
Exactly. So I just thought that was a bit of a tiny upgrade there. So I think it was that. In the podcasters league, I didn't make a trade, but I think you are the only one who makes trade in the podcast league. So you're that one guy that actually takes it seriously when everyone else is just kind of going that way.
I just like trading, and no one likes trading for some reason.
Well, it just doesn't benefit you half the time. That's the thing. Like,
Who cares?
Yeah, I know.
We're here
I know
for
you
fun.
just like getting new players, but
I want a flag. I'm just still partying. I'm like Libba in like Vietnam after the flag.
I was
I'm
going to say
still
after.
just partying
I
hard.
wonder what Libba's doing this week after Saturday night.
Who knows?
All right, let's just look ahead next year. So we're getting under 50 minutes here, so we need to wrap this up a bit. But all right, so Case, who are the kind of 50-50s that you're keeping? So, just disregard the absolute locks. Who are your 50-50s that you're keeping?
Lockie Ash, I think. I think he's coming into his third year. So the role has been a bit concerning, but I think he's going to be a very, very high quality player. So he's around the mark. And then these next kind of four, I'm really tossing up whether to keep them. So Ben Ainsworth, I believe in Ben Ainsworth. We haven't seen the best of him just yet, but I'd feel sick if I delisted Ainsworth and he went on to become a 80, 90 averaging forward. Liam Duggan was on fire early, but had injury issues. I think he's re-signed at the Eagles, which is good. And I think that once Hearn's gone, he's going to be that beautiful natural halfback flanker. Matty Rao, I'm going to keep as
Everyone's
well.
going to keep Matty Rao. That's fine.
And Aaron Norton's the other one. So started the year absolutely on fire, but kind of limped home. It's really going to come down to what forwards look like next year, and if there's going to be currency in keeping someone like Norton. I'm a big Norton man. I just wish he kind of was a bit more consistent with his scoring.
With my keepers, I've got a lot of locks in there. My 50-50s come down to about 3 or 4. So Peter Laddams is someone I'm probably going to keep if he gets traded. If he becomes number one ruck, and he will keep forward status, I think. And if he becomes number one ruck, he should be a pretty handy forward contributor. He'd probably be close to my F1 this year because, I literally have no forwards. Miles Bergman I'm going to keep. Hopefully he keeps defender status. I just don't think he will. Dev Rob, interestingly, is still named as a mid forward by Champion Data, but I just don't see him when they use common sense at the end of the year keeping that as well. But I think I'm still going to keep him because I think there might be a bit of a changing of the guard in just some of those older midfielders. Well, more like Mitch Robinson's got his last year. I don't see how much longevity he's got. Jared Berry is, who knows where he is actually at. I think they might start to persist with someone like Dev Rob, who showed a lot of good things this year.
Yeah.
Even though his fantasy scoring wasn't massive, he had a few good games. I think he had a couple 70s and an 80 or something like that in there. But I think he's kind of better for the experience, especially not playing in his first season. So I think he's going to go okay next year. So I'm kind of pretty happy to keep him. The other one is I'm thinking about it. I just don't see where I fit him in considering I've got enough defenders, and that's Nick Blakey. So he'll get defender status, and he kind of lifted, not huge, but he lifted his game to another level. Like he was good for a 70 off that halfback if he didn't get injured every game for like a period of 10, 15 minutes. I don't know what it is with Blakey, but he just seems to come off and get injured all the time. And then I think he actually did get injured. He broke his leg in the end. But there's always a few games where he just like comes off and he's looking good, and then he'll cop a knee to the back and have to go on the bench and be massaged for a half a game. But then it will come on in the last minute or something like that and play again.
So who does Dawson's departure help more, Blakey or McInerney?
I think it helps Lloyd more than anyone because Lloyd was really down on last year's, and then he'll get 100% of the kick-ins again. Probably Probably both, really. I think they'll both see a bump as a result because they do play those kind of three forwards. Is Harry Cunningham going to go around again?
He's only 28.
Yeah,
he's quite young.
So he's someone.
young.
He stepped up when kind of those boys were out when Lloyd was out, so he could be someone who receives a bump as well. Depends if he remains best 22. He's kind of a bit borderline every now and then, but he's someone who could step into that role. More so the winger though. So maybe someone like Errol, because he's playing on the wing towards him, so it's probably
Warner.
more like, yeah, Warner and Errol Goulden, like those kind of guys as well. All those outside types. I think it's probably going to more help those. Well, if we're going by the end of the season, it's going to more help those kind of two, I think, who are playing, genuine winger roles or more on the wing as well. What are we up to? So we've done that. All right, let's get into 3 players that you want a piece of in 2022. So 3 players that you're jumping on board for 2022. You think they're going to have big years?
I talked about it on the pod the other night. Hayden Young, I think, is kind of flying under the radar. He's always been a proven kind of scorer through the junior ranks. Started his career pretty well last year. Obviously was injured out for a big chunk of this season. He kind of came home super hot. I think he averaged 86 or something like that in his last 4 or 5 games with a couple 90s. I'm big on him. I think he's a big part of Freo's resurgence up the ladder. So get involved with Hayden Young. I think he's going to have a massive 2022.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I'm happy with that.
Paddy Lipinski officially moving to Collingwood, I think they said today. He's requested to go there. I think that's fantastic for him. He's a genuine ball winner and potentially his use isn't always the best, but I think he's going to get a lot of midfield time at the Pies, and I think he's going to seriously improve next year fantasy-wise. And just on that Jordan Dawson thing, I think Justin McInerney's one who is just going to keep getting better and better next year. Hopefully he can get some back status involved in his life from a fantasy point of view. But they're the 3 that I'm quite keen on next year.
2 of mine I've already mentioned already, the 3 that I am keen on. But Trent Rivers, I mentioned in the Melbourne, so I'm keen on him to go to the next level next year. Connor Rosie is someone I'm backing as well. But I think Will Day is going to get over his injuries and he's going to play on the wing. I think he's going to explode for Hawthorn next year. So I think coming into his 3rd year, Will Day is someone I want a piece of. And I do have a piece of in my keepers. He's on my rookie list still, actually. So he's a good upgrade.
Free upgrade.
There as well. So, yeah. Will Day is someone I'm big on. All right, players you think that will slide. Name 3 players you think that are going to come back to earth next season.
Wouldn't surprise me if Aaron Hall falls away a bit next year. Into his 30s. What did North Melbourne want to actually achieve next year? Do they want to actually make some growth in their younger guys? So, him and Zeeble are 2 that, absolutely went bananas this year, but do they start giving more responsibility to, Phillips, or does Dumont come back in and play a sweeper roller cross halfback who's a bit younger? I think he's one who just won't be averaging as high as he did this year. Yes, he still might score well, but I don't think you'll get the 2021 numbers about Aaron Hall. Paul Seedsman's another one. Does Jordan Dawson's arrival hurt him? Seeds getting on to 30 as well. You've got Miller back. Hopefully injury free next year for the Crows. Like Lockie Scholes got another preseason under his belt there. Kind of the future of the club. Seedsman's still be very good, but I just don't think he's going to put up the numbers again this year. And it's still side bottom. We've started to see it this year, but they're another one. You've got Lipinski, Josh Dacos, Nick Dacos coming in. Like they're going to have to start blooding some youth in that midfield. So I can see that side bottom will just basically be a small medium forward next year. So I think his score is going to drastically drop.
Yeah, side bottom was one I had on my list as well. And I think, with Dawson coming in, Seedsman's going to struggle a bit as well. My 3 were Brandon Ellis, because I just think there's going to be a few youngsters coming up. You've got your more outside type. Sharp will probably come along a lot more. But then you've got other midfielders like Noah Anderson can kind of play outside as well. And I think they might affect someone like Brandon Ellis. But we might see him across halfback again. Who knows? Although, I don't know. Gold Coast actually have a fair bit of depth. It's going to be interesting to see how they go next year. Isaac Smith, I think he's just going to be in his final season and taper off. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets injured and that's it at some stage, just knowing his history. And the other one for me is Jack Zeeble. Like we saw at the end of this season, there's just no way he's going that big again. Teams have worked him out. They've worked out if they want to stop North Melbourne, they just stop Jack Zeeble. And, there's a few players. And Aaron Hall went back there as well. So I can probably see Aaron Hall actually going okay again. But probably not as big as last year, that's all. But, yeah, I don't know. I still think he'll be up there as a defender, that's for sure. You've got one last question, Case.
So this is obviously a bit of a we're talking keeper leagues here. Most people have, 10, 15, 20 keepers that they take each year. So your draft pool's obviously always a bit slim when you're going, and obviously a lot of first-year players make up, the drafts. So we've obviously heard the hype about Nick Dacos and how good he is, and he's getting 200 fantasy points in the NAB League, that kind of thing. We've seen Jason Horn absolutely dominate a Sandfield prelim, kick 3 goals. I think he would have scored 113 or something off the top of my head. He's delivering. So these two guys have. You've got pick number 1 or 2 next year in the draft, for example. Are you taking him?
Oh, sorry, hypothetically.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying because I finished bottom, because I didn't. Look, in my Dynasty League, 100%, I'm not going to get them though because I won the flag in that one, but I would 100% take them with my first picks. In our home league, because I'm high up there, if they slid to me, 100% would take them, but I don't know if they will. If I'm contending for a flag, I don't think I'd take them in our home league where we're taking 16, keeping 16 each year.
So if it was between Carl Amon, Dacos and Horn, you'd take Carl Amon?
If I'm going for a flag, yeah, because Carl Amon goes bigger next season.
Okay.
So yeah, but I think if you're a bottom 6 team in your league, if they slide to you, then you take them. But yeah, they're not going to slide to the premiership contenders anyway. So,
you wouldn't. So if you wouldn't regret taking or missing out on a Horn or a Dacos if you were in the window.
Well, you're not going to get him anyway.
Yes, but you say you trade up a pick or
okay.
we can bet to win our...
Yeah, like if there is someone who's going to go big like a Carl Amon, then you still take Carl Amon. But I think they're going to go early to the shitter teams anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
I think these guys are generational. I think if you can get a piece of them...
But we've said that, like, you said that about Rao. He hasn't come on. Like, you even found it, Rao was probably more hyped up than either of these guys. And... I know he's been injured, but you're struggling to keep him this year. That's the thing that can go wrong with some of these younger players. That's the only thing I'm thinking of. But, it's not often that you get someone like Dacos.
No one's looking back on taking Sam Walsh at pick 1.
No, absolutely not. But I'm just saying, like, they can go pear-shaped. Like, it's not often that a top 2 talent becomes a uber primo. Like, Walsh is basically it, really, over the last kind of few years. There's not Bailey Smith, I guess, up there. He was pick 7, though. He probably wasn't as hyped up as much, but he's just as good a fantasy scorer as kind of some of the top
came off that injury and interrupted you.
Yeah, true. And his numbers were good. So on. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think you could, if you need to play it safe to kind of get a good scorer for a flag, then it's probably smarter to do that. But I think if you're down the bottom, you take a punt with them. So yeah, you take them with your first picks early. Yeah, that's just the way I look at it. All right, let's move on to the listener questions. All right, we don't have a lot of listener questions tonight, but we'll move on. All right, so at T2Q03, is it possible for Will Day to turn into Lockie Whitfield type of player with a stacked back line of Hawthorn? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say it's possible.
It's possible, but I'm still not sure. Like, I think, like, Sicily, Jath, Bramble now, who else is back there? Impey, Day, Scrimshaw. There's an absolute plethora of ball-winning, intercepting kind of defender wing types. You could even throw Dan Howe in there as well, who had a pretty good season this year. I don't know, like, he could be, but at the same time, there's a lot of very good players in that Hawthorn side. So I'm just not sure whether you're going to see that.
But what about
big scoring from like Lockie Whitfield's a pretty elite scorer. Is Day going to be an elite scorer?
He looks a similar type of player, put up similar type of junior numbers. There's every chance. I don't know if he will. You can't say he will. There's no absolutes, but there's a good chance he will be, I think.
What do you reckon he'll average next year?
Oh, not huge. Like maybe 80 to 85 and then go bigger after that.
So it's his 3rd year next year. So it's the moving season anyway.
Yeah, I think so. Dottie asks, thoughts on Charlie Constable? Apparently looking elsewhere for opportunities. Where do you think he could land and what could he average? Cheers, fellas.
Well, if you listen to Trade Radio with all this shit, everyone's going to Carlton or Gold Coast. That seems to be where everyone goes. But I don't know. It's weird. They're playing a bit of cat and mouse by the sounds of it with Constable and Clark. Like, they can explore their options, but, if they don't want to go anywhere, we'll take him and probably pay him peanuts. So, I don't know. Where would someone like Constable go? I don't really know who needs that kind of a midfielder.
Yeah, I don't know. And yes, he's shown he's been a good fantasy scorer, but there's so many good fantasy scorers out there that just don't cut it. So you look at someone like, I know Fiorini came in and rocketed back up to kind of, a good scoring option, but there's just like a player like him who, yes, he can score, but there's no guarantee he's going to be best 22 long term, and he could be looking down the barrel of being dropped at any second. So I don't know whether it's if you make the same case for Constable. I think I kind of look at him in some of those ways as well. Like if he's not in the best 22 now, he's probably one of their best younger talents they've had in a long time. I know it's Geelong.
Geelong's a horrible team to even say that about.
Yeah, but I don't know. You look at Fiorini and you think he'd make the Gold Coast side as well. So
I'm just trying to rack my brain who, but like I think he's one. There's a few guys around at the moment. I think like Brody, Will Brody. The same kind of guys we mention each year who have proven they're good fantasy scorers. They just are at the wrong side.
Who was the player that went from GWS to Richmond to someone else? Anthony Miles. Did he go to Gold Coast as well? Who was just a gun fantasy scorer, but just couldn't crack it. Like, I think I can kind of see Constable being one of those. Maybe, I don't know. Like one of those guys that just everyone talks about each year as being a gun, but then just can't quite cut it. I don't know.
Probably a question we can't answer just yet until he moves somewhere.
Yeah, we have to wait and see where he goes.
But it'll be interesting to do the pod after the trade period to kind of reassess where people are out there.
Yeah, all right. Nathan Quarrell, is it too early to send out a hit on my league commissioner who still hasn't coughed up the prize? No, it's not. Depends what the hit is, though, I guess. Don't kill him.
Mate, people need some cash, man.
Just like kneecaps or something.
But like what? Most prizes are like $500 worth and stuff like that. That's if you've been budgeting for that and, Christmas is coming up, people need their cash.
Okay, yeah.
It's un-Australian.
Yeah, so what?
If you're a league commissioner and you haven't paid out the cash that you're holding, that's not actually your cash. That's dodgy.
It sounds like a scene out of Chopper or something like that. I don't know. Kaz just keeps saying cash.
It's cash. I don't own a baseball bat, so like whoever it is safe, and I'm the biggest pussy gun around, so I'm not hitting anyone. I can guarantee you that.
All right, last question, Kaz.
It's from @Blackson. Hi guys, we're having some issues in our league with coach engagement. Being the off season, do you have any suggestions how to entice offending coaches to be more active? And at what point of no contact with the league do you have to replace them as coach?
So this is Blackson. He's in our league, and this is about me, Kaz.
Maybe.
Group chats. So yeah, I'm not in our group chat, and I'll tell.
He quit. He didn't even say why. He just quit. He just left us.
I'll tell you the reason why. So it's not about anyone in the group chat. It's more about me. My productivity when I'm in group chats goes way down because that thing goes off 100 messages a day sometimes. And I get real down on myself if I don't get all my work done. And I'm like a moth to a flame when it comes to like group chats and stuff. And I just cannot look away. It's like, I don't know, like looking at the sun, you stare at it and then you burn your eyes. I just can't stay away. So I had to actually just take myself off. And it does concern me because I do a lot of research in the, and through work and stuff and do a lot of training, I do a lot of research in the kind of mental health field. Big, strong link between device addiction, which is a real thing, the serotonin, the dopamine, the things that, creates in your brain. With these apps and stuff that do actually engineer to act like poker machines and addict you in the same way by, creating delays. So, you scroll down and you wait for the notification that gives you that kind of dopamine hit. The sounds, the noises, they're all scientifically studied to actually kind of addict you. I need to get these things out of my life to focus, concentrate, and I guess be happier overall. So that's why I do it, guys.
So what do we do when we can't contact you? How do you know when the draft is?
I reckon I text like everyone in the league, on a weekly basis. Like not everyone, but I reckon because I'm not super close to everyone in the comp, but the ones I am close to, like 4 or 5 or 6 of them, I would be in regular contact with. Yeah.
But when we do our starting a keeper league pod, you always go, you need to have guys who are fully committed. Are you committed, Hef? That's what you want to know.
Do I set my team every week?
I assume so. I don't know. You're that bad. I honestly don't know.
I throw out a few trades. I set my team each week. I had a good back in the season. It was fun.
You did.
Yeah.
You really ruined your whole tanking plan as well.
I did. I need to play.
You could have got Horn or Dacos, and you decided to win games late.
I don't tank per se, but I take punts in drafts when I don't think I'm going to be a contender. But if I've got the players, if I got the Cattles that are fit, because my main issue this year, I had 12 injured, I think at one stage, which is your whole bench type thing, and you're really running on fumes. I just couldn't field the team I wanted to. But when I had everyone fit and firing, I kind of proved that I can win. I just need a few forwards and I'll be okay.
Why don't you do that app where you've only got like 10 minutes a day to look at one particular app, and once you use it, you can't open it again?
Sure, but why not just not look at it?
Come back to the group chat, Hef. We miss you.
What am I going to do in 10 minutes?
Who can we stir up about Port being shit and losing prelims
Oh, you can
by
still
like
do that.
100
Just
points?
send me a tweet. It's fine. Let's just do that. I've got Twitter on my laptop, so yeah, I'll still answer
All right,
those.
sweet. We'll do a group Twitter chat. He
Just
can't
tweet
get out
me.
of that then.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's wrap it up there. So, thanks for listening for another season. We'll be back around draft time, unless position changes come out beforehand, which I doubt they will, because no, that doesn't happen. We'll be back around draft time, and we'll be doing we'll have the numbers up on our website, and we'll do a mini episode for our members. So make sure you sign up as a member if you're not already. I think there was a few members that I've emailed about not being on the subscription program, and their memberships will actually expire at the start of November if they don't click the renew button. So if you're keen on renewing, just make sure you click that button there, and so then make sure you preserve your membership at its current price as well. So if you're keen to stick around, do that. If you're not a member, head to keeperleaguepod.com.au and check it out. Click the membership button if you're interested, and also hit us up on our socials at Keeper League Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All right, cool. I don't have to look at K's for like another month, so it's going to be great. So
Are we hanging out on Saturday?
Oh, damn it, we are too. Are we driving to Renmark together?
No, I'm going to go down Friday.
Okay, cool. Sweet. I don't have to drive down with you at least.
Thank God.
But yeah, we have to spend a whole Saturday together. But anyway, we'll worry about that when it happens. All right. See you, folks, and have a good off-season.
Talk to you in a month or so.
See ya.